This is BBC Television.
Good evening, and welcome to a centenary celebration of the glorious British Broadcasting Corporation. Over the last few months, I have been asking the dear viewer to get in touch with their votes for the most iconic British Broadcasting Corporation shows, and over the next 4 episodes, I will be counting those down for you. I do hope you can join me for this look back over glorious history of the British Broadcasting Corporation. Roll the videotape. Yes, hello to a brand new series. As that rather strange character informed you before, I'm going to be looking at 100 years of the BBC, which is coming up the centenary this year. So this is a series that I've wanted to do for quite some time. And I asked viewers of the channel to vote for their top BBC programme over the last 100 years, including radio and television. And the results are in. There's some really interesting results actually. And I'm going to be counting you through in this first part 100 to 76. And there are some really interesting ones in here, including some ones that I hadn't really heard of before. So I'd be interested to hear your thoughts in the comments below as to what you think is the most iconic BBC show over the last 100 years. I've got my handy tablet here with some information, so hopefully I get this right. We start at 100 with Grandstand, a British television sports programme broadcast between 1958 and 2007. I certainly remember Grandstand and the theme tune in particular. And it says here, broadcast between 1958 and 2007, one of the BBC's longest running sports shows, alongside the BBC Sports Personality of the Year. First presenter was Peter Dimmock back in 1958. Then moving on to number 99, we have another sports programme. Sport seems to feature quite heavily in this bottom 25, but it still made it into the list. We have the BBC cricket coverage. And I couldn't find much about the BBC cricket coverage. Obviously, it's been happening since, I think, the very beginning. The only thing I could find was that at the very beginning, in the 1920s, the BBC was reluctant to spend its severely limited airtime on long football or cricket games, regardless of their popularity. So they were very popular back in the 1920s when the BBC began. But it's certainly gained a lot more coverage since then, and the BBC continues to cover all the major cricket events to this day. Coming in at 98, we have one that I hadn't heard of, but my good friend Dave Coomer pointed me in the direction of this documentary from 1974 called The Family. 1974 BBC television series made by producer Paul Watson and directed by Frank Rodham. It was a fly-on-the-wall documentary series seen by many to be the precursor to reality television. Next up, we have something slightly more modern. Well, I see it as modern anyway. In the early noughties, we have The Smoking Room, British sitcom set entirely in the smoking room of a fictitious British company. This Brian Dooley penned comedy features an ensemble cast anchored by Robert Webb, who you'll know from Peep Show, talking about almost anything except work as they leisurely waste away the day dragging on cigarettes. And of course that's a bit of social history as well, because there's no such thing as smoking rooms anymore. And I think, when did this come out? 2004 till 2005. I'm pretty sure it wasn't long after that that smoking was banned, certainly in pubs and offices. Wasn't long after that. It kind of has a bit of The Office feel to it, and I do remember watching The Smoking Room and thinking it was very clever humour, really enjoying it. Next up, one that I thought might be slightly higher, it is Songs of Praise. Very, very long-standing religious show. Anyone who's grown up in Britain will no doubt know the Sunday thrills of songs of praise. I always particularly find it quite funny watching people in church congregations singing their hearts out as soon as the camera is on them. That's very cynical, isn't it? But yes, the Songs of Praise has been running since 1961 and of course is now presented by Mr. Walking in the Air himself, Alan Jones. I do actually have a friend who works for the BBC and works on Songs of Praise, so I know it's certainly in good hands as it goes towards the future. Next up we have more sport, and it is the 1966 coverage of the World Cup, which again, if you live in England, is certainly an historic moment in sport, and especially the BBC commentator Kenneth Walthamstowe's Wolston Holmes, I want to say that right, in case there's any football fans watching. And yeah, his famous quote of, "They think it's all over, it is now." Yeah, soon after that victory, of course, that quote became a widely used expression when England beat West Germany 4-2 after extra time to win the FIFA World Cup. Next up is a series that I don't think that many people have seen, but I really, really enjoyed it. One of my favourite BBC dramas, and it's Cambridge Spies from 2003. First aired in 2003, the 4-part mini-series dramatises the notorious actions of 4 Cambridge University students who are recruited in 1934 to spy for Russia. It's definitely worth watching, and some really great actors in that as well. So I would recommend, if you haven't seen it already, to check out Cambridge Spies. Next up is one that no doubt, if this list was made a bit earlier in time, no doubt this would have got higher, but it is Hancocks Half Hour, one of my favourite classic BBC comedy shows, and I think one of the only ones on the list that is both a radio show and a TV show. It was a BBC radio comedy and later television comedy series broadcast from 1954 to 1961, written by Ray Galton and Alan Simpson, starring Tony Hancock and a young Kenneth Williams and Sid James as well, who'd go on to be in the Carry On films, of course. Yeah, you can check it out. You can certainly check out the radio series on all over the place. It's on YouTube, but I think I've listened to it on Apple Music as well. Really, really, it still stands the test of time. Still really, really funny to this day. Next up, we have one that I haven't watched as much, but I know a few people who wrote in the comments really enjoyed watching The Late Show, a British television arts magazine programme broadcast on BBC Two weeknights at 11:15, directly after Newsnight, and often referred to the graveyard slot in terms of television scheduling. And it had many of the important actors, bands and artists that would go on to become very, very famous, of course. Notable moments include outbursts by actor Keith Allen, who got very drunk and shouted at Farouk Dundee that he didn't so much have a chip on his shoulder as a whole vindaloo. He'd been drinking heavily and eventually stormed off the set, hurling abuse at the producer. The studio power being cut off when Stone Roses were performing Made of Stone, as presenter Tracy McLeod struggled to cover and link to the next item. Lead singer Ian Brown can be heard repeatedly shouting "amateurs." So yeah, it's I think they had one in Ireland. Was it the Late Late Show as well? And certainly the Late Show in America is very, very popular as well. It ran from 1989 to 1995. Next up, a documentary series called QED, which ran from 1982 to 1989. Popular science documentary films were on there, including some very, very notable films. I hope you're sitting comfortably, because our next one is, can you guess it? Jackanory. Yes, Jackanory, which people of a certain age like myself will no doubt remember. It ran originally between 1965 and 1996 and was all about trying to get kids into reading by often having very famous presenters that would read through a book on air. And I think, is it still going to this day? It doesn't say, but I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, that's Jackanory. Then it's on to The Buddha of Suburbia. Very important drama from 1993. David Bowie did the soundtrack for this, of course. And yeah, this programme based on Hanif Qureshi's novel, I hope I've said that right, of the same name, is a satirical coming-of-age story featuring Karim, a half-English, half-Indian teenager who struggles to find his identity as he approaches adulthood whilst living in London in the 1970s. A kids' Christmas show next, and one that features one of my favourite actors of all time, Patrick Troughton, who of course played the second Doctor. Those of you who follow this channel know what a huge Doctor Who fan I am. And yeah, it's based on the classic children's novel by John Masefield. The story follows the exploits of a young boy, Kay Harker, who finds himself drawn into the world of magic and danger when he encounters an old Punch and Judy man. And yeah, that's still a classic, certainly to watch over Christmas time if you get a chance. I think it's on BritBox, may well be on BBC iPlayer as well. Next we have Look and Read, another one for kids of a certain age like me. I certainly remember watching Look and Read as a young kid. A BBC television programme for primary schools aimed at improving children's literacy skills. And yeah, that was one I certainly remember when the TV was wheeled out. It was one of the most exciting parts of the week, definitely watching Look and Read. Children in Need is next. A host of celebrities get together for the BBC's annual telethon in an effort to raise money for children in need. That's been going since 1980, and yeah, they've raised absolutely millions and millions over the years, haven't they, for children in need, and lots of actors, comedians, presenters get involved in the fun every year to try and raise money for children in need, of course. Next is a one that I don't think many people will have seen. I got the chance to watch it, thankfully, on, I think it was on YouTube, but it's definitely worth tracking down if you can. It's the 1954 BBC version of 1984, starring a young Peter Cushing. And of course, it's an adaptation of the 1949 novel of the same name by George Orwell, originally broadcast on BBC television in December of 1954. Really good version. And if you enjoy the book, as I do, then it's definitely a version that I would recommend. Snooker programmes next. We have Pot Black, a snooker tournament in the UK broadcast on the BBC. Each match was contested over a single frame where other tournaments were significantly longer. The event carried no ranking points but played a large part in the popularisation of the modern game of snooker. If you've watched BBC for any length of time, you'll know that the snooker coverage is something that's evergreen and always on. It ran until 1986 and started in 1969 at the Sheffield City Hall, and was one of the programmes that helped to popularise people getting colour televisions. Something a little bit more recent now, from 2015, the Back in Time for Christmas series. There's Back in Time, lots of different series now where families are asked to live in different decades, and so yeah, modern families have to live out what it was like to live in the 1940s, 50s, 60s. Why I chose to put on the poll the Back in Time for Christmas, I thought that is a particularly fun one to watch at Christmas and see all the social history and things that have changed since the wartime till the modern day. Really interesting to watch. The Rob Shaw family featured in the BBC series Back in Time for Dinner, travel back in time once more to celebrate Christmas festivities. Beginning in the 1940s, the household recreates a typical Christmas day of that period before doing it all over again for the next 6 decades. And yeah, really interesting to see how the festival of Christmas has changed during that time. More documentaries next. Next up is Arena. Arena started in 1975 and had over 600 episodes, a British television documentary series. And yeah, one of the things I remember most about this, again, is the theme tune. I seem to remember theme tunes more than the actual programs themselves. It had a bottle, a glass bottle floating out to sea, with a really strange, wonderful theme tune too, which I only found out recently is actually a Brian Eno track from his the title track of his album Another Green World. But yes, it was a British television documentary series with some very, very notable episodes indeed. Next up we have, not the Netflix series of the same name, but the one that started it all, House of Cards, which was out in 1990. I thought it was actually earlier than that. I remember my dad watching this and being thoroughly impressed with it. With his term as Prime Minister ending along with his political career, Francis Urquhart wants to secure his retirement and his place in history. There's only 4 episodes, so I'm guessing they're like an hour long each. But yeah, it was so popular, of course, that it was remade on Netflix with the much more popular series starring Kevin Spacey. The less said about him, the better. Next up, we have another classic, absolute classic, Quatermass and the Quatermass Experiment, 1953. This is a notable I found because I remember my dad saying that when he was young, so he was born in the mid-40s, so by 1953 he probably would have been about 8 or 9 when he watched this, and he said it was one of the few things that really lasted with him and really scared the life out of him, which my dad is a lot tougher a soul than me, so to hear that he found this scary, it really means something. And I think a lot of kids his age will say the same. The Quatermass Experiment is a British science fiction serial broadcast by BBC Television during the summer of 1953, and it was restaged by BBC4 in 2005. 6 episodes, with 4 of them unfortunately missing. So yeah, it's really iconic sci-fi series that you have to check out if you can. I think the remaining episodes are available on iPlayer and BritBox as well. One of my favourites as a teenager next, Rock Family Trees. Yeah, Rock Family Trees was, I think, started in the 90s, and the 2 series, there were only 2 series of Rock Family Trees, plotted the history of assorted bands and music scenes by tracing different members. And yeah, it was a real musical education for me. So many bands I discovered because of that series, particularly, I do believe Susie and the Banshees was one of the bands that I really got into as a direct result of that documentary. I watched it because of the links with the Sex Pistols, who I was a big fan of at the time. And it obviously branched off into lots of bands that were around the scene at the time, from the Susie and the Banshees to Adam and the Ants, to Generation X, to the Slits. Yeah, I love documentaries like that where you learn so much and discover so much new music. So yeah, that's definitely one that I'm glad to see on the list. Next up, similar to Children in Need, we have Comic Relief, which started in 1985. So is that 5 years after? Yeah, 5 years after I think Children in Need started. Founded by Richard Curtis, who you'll know from 4 Weddings and a Funeral, Love Actually, Blackadder, that kind of thing, and comedian Lenny Henry, in response to the famine in Ethiopia, which you'll know is also the beginnings of Live Aid and Band Aid as well. Yeah, it's still going, of course, and has lots of comedians getting involved in international projects around international poverty and trying to make a difference. And again, it's raised absolutely millions towards good causes over that time. There's only 2 more to go. And first up we have Victorian Kitchen Garden series. This is one that my wife Lucy used to watch as a kid. I hadn't really heard of it before, but she introduced me to it. It's the most meditative and relaxing series ever, I think. It was first in 1987, and it revolves around a wonderful guy called Harry Dodson, who uses produce from an estate and looks at different ways to cook using those Victorian methods. And which again doesn't sound particularly exciting, but it's really, really lovely. It's got that wholesome feeling like Repair Shop has now, definitely worth watching if you're having a particularly bad day. And the last one for part number 1. At number 76, we have another childhood favourite of mine. I promise I did not influence these votes in any way, but it is the You and Me TV show, Cosmo and Dibs. You and Me is a BBC TV programme for preschool children, broadcast from 1974 to 1992. The programmes consisted of various segments intended to educate and entertain young children, and included elements for early literacy and numeracy. And of course, I do remember Cosmo and Dibs, the amazing puppets on there. It was almost like a British version of Sesame Street, and was really good fun to watch. So there we are, the first 25 on the list. Hope you've enjoyed a little bit of nostalgia there, looking back over those programmes. Maybe it's given you some ideas of TV programmes you've yet to watch that you'd like to check out in the future. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you can join me for the next one, when I'll be counting down from 75 to 50. So yeah, really excited to find out what are the next programmes. Thanks for watching, take care, and see you for the next episode.